Welcome back to the Skinema podcast. This is episode 5. I am Nick with my amazing co-host Shaitan, and this is an episode we've been highly anticipating, but it is David Lynch's Lost Highway from 1997. And we're just going to kind of get straight into the movie. We're not going to do our typical what we've been watching and all that. We just really want to dive into this. So I'll start with you, Jathan. Before we get into any plot details or anything, when is the first time you heard about this movie, and what was your initial thought process going into it, and what did you feel like after you watched it?
This isn't the first time I heard about this movie, but the day that I decided to buy my copy of it on Criterion was I was in Maine, and I was hanging out with my friend and their family up in their house and just having a blast, honestly. And my friend's dad is a huge movie guy, and he was a huge Lynch guy as well. So after I had a conversation with him on Twin Peaks, I decided to pull the trigger on Lost Highway because I know you've seen it. I know people love it, and I just had to check it out for myself. So I bought it on, I believe, July 5th, and it took
Criterion
me
sale, right?
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah, it took me a month or so to get around to it because I had it shipped back in Massachusetts. I went back and forth between Mass and Cali, and then I brought it back with me. Popped it in last week, and it just blew me away. David Lynch is a special director.
Yeah. So I first heard about this movie actually from one of my favorite podcasts. I love listening to the Real Talk podcast, and one of the guys on the podcast, this is one of his favorite movies, and I have my letterbox pulled up of it. I can get the exact date I first watched it. So I first watched it August 31st of 2024, so almost exactly a year ago. I watched this for the first time, and I certainly liked it. I know I didn't pick up on everything the first watch, and I knew that someday I would want to watch it again. And then the Criterion sale of November of 2024, I bought it, and ever since then I've just been kind of obsessed with it. It's my favorite David Lynch. It was one of the first David Lynch movies I watched. I think the first one I technically might have watched was Dune, but this one was one of the early ones. And like I said, I've been obsessed ever since. I think this movie just gets better and better each rewatch. I think I find new things so far. I've seen it a total of 4 times. And, my first watch going into it, I didn't know much about it. I kind of went in blind. So it kind of surprised me. But, after watching it a bunch and doing a bunch of research, watching interviews and, getting a perspective of what the actors think I got a full kind of idea of what David Lynch was trying to portray. And this is part of his quote-unquote LA trilogy, which is Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire. And I think a word to describe this film and all those films is, a dream or a nightmare. I think if you go in with that kind of idea of it, I feel like you'll understand this movie a little bit better and you'll get a better grasp of what they're trying to portray. But yeah, that was just kind of our quick initial things. If you just want to dive straight into it, I can give a little synopsis of the movie before. So just the letterbox synopsis is a tortured jazz musician finds himself lost in a enigmatic story involving murder, surveillance, gangsters, doppelgangers, and an impossible transformation inside a prison cell. So that's a pretty
Yeah, you gave that synopsis, but it does not paint the picture for the movie at all. If you've seen the movie,
gives you nothing.
Yeah. This is not Baby's first movie. If you're like a beginner, do not turn this on. One, you're gonna have a bad time, and 2, it's not for you. If this is your first movie, I think you have to go into this with some type of knowledge of film and cinematic language, because this will throw you for a loop. Absolutely. Yeah. This movie's not for everyone. This movie I wouldn't throw on with my friends. In fact, I threw this on at a rainy day. It never rains in San Diego. So I felt like that was like the perfect day to throw that on, because it's an anomaly. It
Yeah.
really is. You never see movies like this made. Um, it's a wonder that it even got produced in the first place. Um, I read a lot of David Lynch's like supplemental material, his interviews and stuff, and he first conceived this movie just from the title alone, Lost Highway, um, which is crazy to think about considering how much goes into making a movie, and sometimes that's what it starts from. And he dives into his process in his interviews and stuff, and I'm sure I'll like piggyback on it later, but this is a movie you need to watch once you have an understanding of film and like what the medium can do and just cinematic language in general. Um, there's multiple characters in this film that become different people, if that makes sense. And
Hmm.
it honestly felt like multiple, I wouldn't say multiple movies, but it definitely felt like a collage of movies all in one because there's one overarching story, but
Hmm.
if you wanted to, you could skip straight into Act Two, and it's like its own thing compared to
Yeah.
Act One. Um, we'll dive into spoilers later, but again, it's a huge film. It's gonna throw you for a loop, and it's a long one, so it really takes its time in setting up the atmosphere and just the overall. Nick described it as a dream, but I would describe it as purgatory. Like it does
Hmm.
feel like torture in a good way, but
Yeah. I think the best way to do this, I have my talking points of certain things I want to hit on, but I think the best way to do this is just kind of go through the start to finish of the movie. I mean, I have it pretty much memorized. I've seen it a bunch, but I'll just kick off into the plot point. So if you've never seen this, there are going to be certain spoilers, but the beginning portion is kind of just, what the trailers show in the synopsis. But it starts off with Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette's character. Bill Pullman's character's name is Fred Madsen, and Patricia Arquette's character in this portion of the movie is Renee Madsen. And it kind of just starts with them, in their home. Fred Madsen is a nighttime jazz player. He seems like, he's kind of sick of his job and kind of sick of this world. Like he just seems very going through the motions. And that's what his marriage is at this point as well. You know, they seem like, I think Patricia Arquette's character says at the beginning, because he asks her, are you going to go to the club tonight and, watch me perform? And she's like, no, I think I'll just stay in and read. But, when I get home, you can wake me up if you want. Kind of insinuating, like, if, I'm just going to say, if you want to come home and, you want to have sex, you can do that. If not, it's fine. We can just go to bed. So it seems like a lot of their marriage is very forced. And, they're kind of just going through the motions with each other. But in this first act, you pretty much just get Fred Madsen, and you see him kind of slowly losing his mind. And, like I said, he's a jazz musician, but he doesn't really like it. It seems like he's just doing it to make ends meet. And as this kind of first act goes, you see that there's these tape recordings that get delivered to their house. And it's tape recordings of them in their home while they're sleeping, but they don't know where they're coming from. They don't know who's recorded them. They don't know what's recording them. So they call the police. And this pretty much is what kickstarts the craziness of this movie. I don't have the official tweet. I don't have the official quote pulled up, but Fred Madsen's character says something that I think just describes this whole movie is he likes to remember things his way, not necessarily how they happen, but how he interprets them. And I think that just kind of reveals the whole movie. So, in this first act, you get obviously Renee and Fred Madsen. They're being recorded. They don't know where the tapes are coming from. And they call the police. They're very nervous. And I just want to kick this off into kind of the first question. So, in this first act, they go to a house party at one of Renee's close friend's house. I forget. Let me get the character's name. Um, Andy. They go to Renee's friend's Andy's house. And at this party, this is where Fred Madsen meets the mystery man. when this part came up, what did you interpret this as? Because I feel like this kind of is a good indicator of what this film kind of represents. And there's no right or wrong answer. Just what did you feel in this moment when Fred met the mystery man for the first time at the house party?
Um, it felt scary. It felt
Mm-hmm. It's very scary.
it felt insanely unnerving because obviously I don't want to be mean, but I feel like everyone has kind of met someone that like I wouldn't say is socially awkward, but just like kind of crosses the boundaries of what is socially acceptable and how you approach someone and just how you generally uh, make them feel. And the mystery man is like to me the embodiment of that, and just like honestly a personification of like evil, because as
Yep.
you see later in the film, like whenever he's on screen you just feel like he's up to no good. There's absolutely no redeeming qualities about this character, and it pushes uh, Billy Madison's character into or sorry, Bill Pullman's character into a
Yeah.
very dark place, and he even does that on screen. You see him walk into this dark hallway, and he doesn't really
Yeah.
become the same person anymore. It's obviously a metaphor to show that he's going into this dark place and that he's not going to be sane or just a working member of society anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
the mystery man is a very disturbing character because he the main plot point with him is that he is in two places at once. And he says this to him. He gives Bill Pullman's character a phone, and he's like, "I'm in your house right now." And like that's just fucking creepy. Like there's no words to mince around it. Like
Yeah.
he's delivering these videotapes of him in his home. A home is someplace you should feel safe and like not have to worry about people invading your privacy or anything. And he's that type of character. He's the creepy crawly like monster in your closet type of character.
Yeah. Um, I think upon watching this a few more times, the mystery man to me, which I agree with what you said, but I think the mystery man is pretty much just the figment of Fred's imagination. He is like, you know how they say like good angel, bad angel. He's kind of the bad angel, because I take it as the mystery man. I don't think he is physically there, because everything he says, especially in the first conversation with Fred, he's like, "I'm at your house right now," and he's like, "Well, how did you get in?" He's like, I only go places where I'm welcomed." I take it as the mystery man is the part of Fred's mind that is, the dark, evil mystery side, because this is something that I believe. I don't know if it's right or not. I don't know if David Lynch wanted me to intend it this way, but um, I take it as Bill Pullman does all these things, but how he says, I don't, I don't remember things how they actually happen. I like to remember them how I want to. I take it as, he is the one that's actually doing the recordings, setting up the cameras, dropping off, the videotapes at his house, but when it's in the actual real time, real world, he just lets his mind forget it. Like he just wants to make up this whole elaborate scheme to seem like he didn't do the heinous acts that he did. And when the mystery man first gets introduced, I feel like that's where I really started to feel that, just by him saying, "I'm in your house right now," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm only here because you let me in," and that's how I take it. And after that house party scene, when they were at Andy's house for the house party, Fred and Renee leave. They go back home. Obviously, Fred is pretty disturbed and freaked out. Renee didn't really know what happened, so she just thinks Fred is having one of his kind of, episodes, or he seems like a very unsettled man. So this is not out of the norm for her. But when they get back home, they obviously go to bed, and this is where I jumped the first time I saw it. But they're both in bed, and Fred is like having nightmares and dreams, and he kind of rolls over and looks at Renee, and the mystery man's face pops up on Renee's face, and that's just kind of, I think that's him just, when he looks at her, that's the guilt, and he sees it because, and this, okay, I have to say this, and this kind of gets into spoilers, but a little bit after the scene is what you alluded to, Jay Thumb, where he kind of walks into that dark hallway and kind of just loses himself, and then you get a flash of the videotapes, and you actually see where Fred Madsen kills his wife Renee, and her body. It's very quick. It's very like it's graphic, so it's quick. But there is a quick shot of like them in the bedroom. Obviously, there's a videotape kind of above recording them, and her body is just destroyed, like cut into different pieces, just destroyed. And I think, like I said, the mystery man just represents the guilt. Every time he sees him, he sees it. Kind of reminds him of what the real truth is. But you know, when he doesn't see him and he's kind of just living in his own world, he thinks, he thinks somebody else is doing this.
Yeah. What's his name would blush? Patrick Bateman, from what he does to that poor woman. But
Yeah, that's a good alluding to, because I feel like a lot of people have seen American Psycho, and kind of
I'd say he's worse than Bateman.
Who, Fred Madsen?
Yeah.
I think he's worse too, but I think they're in the same realm of like, they think they didn't commit these acts, but they really did, and they have this crazy mind where so much is going on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on the fact that, like, the videotapes, obviously that's a metaphor for, like, okay, Madison's, like, a fucked up person, so, like, he's obviously, like, his mind's a little fragmented, and I think the videotapes is a good allegory for this. A videotape is something you can watch over and over and over again, and for me, my interpretation was, like, that is his mind replaying that event over and over and over again, because he just cannot get over it. He is in complete denial of what happened, and you see that through the story, at least my interpretation. David Lynch is a director who will shoot you in the face if you ever ask him what his interpretation was. So it's completely left up to the viewer. But my point of view and perspective was that throughout the movie, he's in complete denial of what has happened, to the point where, and we're going to dive into spoilers, but he creates this other persona of, like, himself, where he lives this fantasy, where he's just this completely normal dude. Well, not completely normal, but you get the idea.
Yep.
He creates Pete, who, remind me who he's played by?
Balthazar Getty.
Yeah, so he creates this whole other persona, and eventually that reality is shattered too. And I'm just gonna tell you the ending of the movie. It's him on the run from.
Before we get to that, there's a few more things I want to touch on in the first act.
Okay.
Before we get down to Pete's story, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
just
sure.
The two things I wanted to touch on more in the first act is the opening of the film is one of my favorite opening credits of all time. The song is "I'm Deranged," David Bowie's "I'm Deranged," and I'm gonna pull up the lyrics on my end just because I want kind of the specific things I'm gonna talk about. But the first time I watched this, I didn't understand what it represented, but now, obviously, knowing this film very well, it's kind of, if you're familiar with the kind of acronyms of Death Row, it's also known as the Green Mile, Highway to Hell, all that type of stuff. So it's obviously very represented in a car driving fast down a highway in a very manic way. So that's what that opening kind of represents. And it's the lyrics I really like, because it's like the very first line of "I'm Deranged," the song. It's funny how secrets travel. I start to believe if I were to bleed. It's like, it's kind of representing Fred Madsen's mind right now, that he believes what he wants to believe, even if it's not the truth. And obviously we know it's not the truth because he kills his wife. And I think it's just so effective what David Lynch says. Like, I don't see how you can start this movie and watch that opening title sequence and not be completely sucked into what you're about to go through. And every time I do watch this, I always rewind that opening credits and watch it again, because I think it is perfect, and it's so effective just for seeing literally a shot of a highway and just names popping up. But the song choice was phenomenal. If there's anything you want to touch on that, go for it. If not, I have just one more thing for the first act of this movie. Then we can move on to kind of the real spoily second half of the movie.
Yeah, I think the first act does just a great job of setting everything up, and if by the end of the first act, if you're not invested, then you need to turn off the movie because
Hmm. Honestly, yeah, and that's
that's
not
what
like
a
a shot,
first
but it's
yeah,
yeah.
that's what a first act should do. It should get you invested in the movie, and it should tell you all you need to know about it. And I think David Lynch paces this movie to perfection. Um, it tells you everything you need to know in the first act, and if you're not invested, then it gives you the exit door because from then on out, it's just a straight trip.
Yeah. For this next thing I just want to talk about in the first act before we move on is I don't know if you knew this. I definitely didn't know the first time I watched it because I'm not really familiar with this real life trial, but David Lynch has said it, and there's a lot of parallels in this, that the O.J. Simpson trial really influenced a lot of the themes of this in the sense that, like I said, I don't know the O.J. trial too well, but everybody and their mother knows he probably committed those murders. But what David Lynch said is what was so interesting is that, after the trial and after everything, he just went back to living his own life, being like a completely normal guy. But he was so curious with it is that how could a guy that did these horrible acts just, continue to live on and believe that his truth is the real truth when in fact it's probably not. It isn't. And Fred Madsen is the exact same way. He kills his wife, but he goes on and lives like it never happened, which is just not the truth at all. So those parallels I think are super interesting. Like I said, the first time I watched, I did not pick up on that, but after reading and watching David Lynch interviews, I think it's very clear. I don't know if you know any background of the OJ trial. I really don't. I haven't really seen any of the documentaries or read up on it, but did you know that when you watched it, or is that something new that you just realized?
That was something new that just occurred to me. That was an epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see where he's coming from with that because ultimately it is about Bill Pullman's character's denial about the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just a really fascinating idea that David Lynch conceived. Um, I'm going to spoil the ending a little bit. It's him on the highway running. It ends how the movie begins with just this manic driving on the highway. And once you understand the movie, well, not understand, but once you've seen the full movie, you can kind of see the bigger picture a little bit in that it's just this guy who refuses to accept reality and is kind of on the run from his problems, and you see that in his manic driving, just like the amount of, I guess, weight he has to carry from making this mistake that he clearly regrets. And it's just wild to me. It's really creative, and you have to, I'm assuming Lynch like really put himself in a dark place writing this because one, it's just so in depth, and two, it's the emotion conveyed here is just insane to me. It's not something that you'll see in most movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then getting into Act Two, I feel like this is really the portion of the movie where if you're not invested, if you're not really understanding what's going on, it's this I think where the film can really lose you. But obviously, this opens up with, Bill Pullman was obviously in a jail cell because he does get caught. Obviously, he gets taken to prison. But Act Two opens with this kind of like, fictional little, I don't even know what you want to call it, magical thing that happens where they kind of wake up in the morning and the guard comes to the prison cell and it's no longer Fred Madsen. It is a much younger man, probably 15 to 20 years younger, called, what's his last name? Pete Dayton, played by Balthazar Getty. And he, is just in place for Fred. But they don't know how this happened. The guards don't know how this happened. It's a total mix-up on their end. And while, yes, Pete and Fred are the same person because Pete is just a figment of Fred's imagination. Fred doesn't know. I mean, Pete doesn't know why he was there. He's super confused. He doesn't know what's going on. But I'm just gonna give a little synopsis of quickly of Act Two. But Pete is a younger man, probably in his early to mid 20s. He works at a mechanic shop where he at the time he has two parents that are married. Normal young man life. He has a girlfriend. He works full time at the shop. His boss at the shop is actually comedy legend Richard Pryor. It was cool to see him pop up. And Pete, he's a good mechanic, but he has this very close relationship with Mr. Eddie, who is a kind of older gangster who kind of just plays stuff by his own air. He just shows up to the mechanic shop whenever he wants. He always requests Pete. He wants Pete to drive with him to hear certain sounds. I'm sure he gives Pete some money under the table on top of what he has to pay for the mechanic stuff. So all seems pretty normal into the exact moment which we think it's Renee, Fred's wife, but in this part of the story, her name is Alice Wakefield, and she obviously looks very different. Renee has bangs, and she has a little bit of middle length hair, and it's a little bit of a kind of mahogany color. But Patricia Arquette plays Alice in the second half of this movie, where she is just your typical blonde hair, and she seems like she's Mr. Eddie's girlfriend, and it just kicks into that. But before we get into too much details of it, what did you feel when this very different shift of the movie happens? Were you expecting it? Did it shock you? Did it confuse you?
It felt like a bad acid trip. It felt like I woke up after I blacked out, and I have no clue what's going on around me. I have no clue what the world is around me, and that really threw me for a loop in a good way because he uses that to its advantage. You feel like someone died, and like we're just watching a completely different movie. I wrote some notes down that I'll just read, but Lynch's style of filmmaking is like a collection of stories that are like super loosely connected, but it's just vague enough to keep me engaged, and he uses that to its advantage. This world feels a lot brighter compared to Act 1, where it's very dark and shadowy. You already feel like you're in this like deep place that doesn't feel welcoming at all. And I just wanted to say this briefly, but if I were teaching a class on like storyboarding, I'd show them this movie because it is just insane to me, like how this movie looks. Again, with this Act 2 world, it just feels so much brighter, and I'll kind of dive into Patricia Arquette's character a little more, but she's a lot more like fantastical in this, in the sense that like they kind of flanderize her character, but it's in a way to serve the plot, in that she feels like this unattainable, like perfect, like pixie girl that serves Pete's fantasies and Fred's fantasy of just having this angel that he has to chase. Really, that's the impression I got. There's one shot where like I think it's the first time Pete meets her, where she is wearing this white dress, she has golden hair, and the lighting just enhances that quality. It
The
looks
song
like
too.
It looks
It's like
like
this
she's
magic moment.
she's glowing, literally, like. But what was the question again? Sorry, I kind of.
No, I was just no. You pretty much answered. I just was saying like, obviously, the Act 2 shift is very abrupt and it's very different. And you kind of answered it. Just like how did it feel? And you pretty much answered it.
Yeah, it feels like a different movie.
I feel like on a first watch too, it's very. I mean, when I first watched it, I was not expecting that at all. I had no idea that was coming, and it definitely, like I said, the first watch I felt like I had a good grasp of the story, but when I watched it that second time, I'm like, oh, okay, this connects with this, and there's a lot, and I'm ready to get into some more of the meat and spoilers of the second act. But if you want to say anything first, please go for it.
I haven't seen this movie, Tenet, but I'm gonna pull a quote from it. You need to you just need to feel this movie. Like
Yeah.
there my mind I'm a thinker. So like I'm constantly like I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about act 1, but this is a movie that you just need to feel, honestly. You need to feel the movie before you can start putting the puzzle pieces together. Because if you use Act 1, if you're building a puzzle, you try to build the corner pieces first, right? Like, that's the rule. And you might have a couple pieces, but you're going to have some middle pieces. You're going to have pieces from the other side of the puzzle. So I wouldn't even try to bother putting this movie together until you have the complete picture. David Lynch uses this metaphor all the time in his interviews and like supplemental material. He says you need to look at the donut and not the hole in the donut.
Mhm. I like
But
that.
yeah, it's gonna throw you for a loop, and you just have to accept that this movie is not made conventionally. It's not told in a linear sense. We're jumping forward in time. We're jumping from someone's psyche. We're jumping in a moment where they're blissfully ignorant, and there's a moment where they are painfully aware of what they've done.
Mhm. Yeah. So this is kind of, I think, the best way to understand Act Two, and I feel like when I did rewatch this a couple weeks ago, this is the way I like to describe Act Two. All the events in Act Two and all the people in Act Two, besides Pete, are real characters that stuff actually happened. Pete is just the figment of Fred's imagination. He's just a younger man who, he has a girlfriend, but obviously he falls in love and has a relationship with Alice. He has a good job. He's friends with a gangster. He has like a good home life. So it's all these positive things. But everybody in Act Two, I think, is a version of their true self because, and these are the reasons why.
Like you
I
said, he
think Al.
remembers it how he remembers it.
Mhm. I think Alice and Renee and Patricia Arquette has gone on to say this in interviews that yes, they are physically different. They look different. They have different names. Their personalities are very different, but they are one and the same. And this is why. And I have reasons for other characters as well. But her friend Andy in the first act of the movie, obviously he is wealthy. He has a nice house. He has a lot of guests. Andy is in Act Two, and Alice is friends with Andy in Act Two. So that's a little connection that shows that they are the same. And you know, in the first act, Fred is very what's the word I'm looking for? He is very jealous in his relationship. He seems like he's very worried when Renee goes out because he thinks that she's having an affair, but that's not the truth. Renee is very loyal to Fred. But I think why they are the same because I think earlier in Renee's life, I think she definitely was some type of sex worker or escort or something because she's obviously friends with Fred, who Fred seems like he's some type of, you know, adult film producer or something like that. So that shows that connection. And then Mr. Eddie, and this is on the credits, on the cast list too. He's Mr. Eddie slash Dick Laurent. And in the beginning of the movie, I think Fred gets a call that says Dick Laurent is dead. At the end of Act 2, Fred Madsen pops back up and he kills Mr. Eddie, who is Dick Laurent. And then obviously at the end of the movie they show the scene where Fred goes on the intercom himself and says Dick Laurent is dead. But in the beginning of the movie you hear the receiving end of that. So I think what I'm just trying to get at is everybody in Act 2, this was kind of their life to some degree beforehand. The only thing that is untrue and made up is Pete, which Pete is just, I guess you can just say, the younger, better, cooler version of Fred. And there's another
He's a
moment
chick magnet. Like they pointed
yeah,
out, but like
the cops have a funny quote of it if you remember. If you
yeah.
don't remember, I'll say it. Do you remember what they say?
I think they said he gets more dick or fuck. He gets more dick.
The opposite.
They said he gets more pussy than a toilet seat.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear too that this is obviously a figment of imagination because Alice is like a very mature, beautiful woman, and Pete is a younger man and just when you look at it, it's like, how does that work? But obviously, this is made up. It's fairy tale. But another good way to show that, Pete and Fred are one of the same is because I don't know if you caught this. I only caught this on my fourth watch, so it took me a while. But there's a moment when he's in his mechanic shop, and one of the mechanics next to him is playing jazz music, and it's the exact same jazz music that Fred was playing at the beginning of the movie. And Pete is underneath the car, like on his thing, and he gets himself from underneath the car, and he's like grabbing his ears like this, and he turns off the music and plays something else. And the other mechanic is like, "Hey, don't change that. I like that." And Pete's like, "No, I can't listen to it." He's like, "Please stop. I'm getting a headache." So that to me is just showing that Pete is obviously the good parts of Fred, and he doesn't want any of that truth negative parts in his life. So the music brings him back to being like, "Oh, that's my real self. I don't want to hear that anymore. I want to stay as Pete, as this figment of my imagination." I think that's just something that took me a while to discover and pick up on, but once you get that, it's like, oh man, David Lynch really had all these crazy details in it.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that, but I've only seen the film once, but Lynch
It
is
took
one
me
of
4
those.
watches, so.
Yeah, Lynch is one of those filmmakers that just sprinkles every scene with those little details that are endlessly rewatchable. Tells you a bigger picture of the story, and yeah, he clearly understands like derealization and the denial of reality and pulling yourself deeper into your fragmented mind. And he enters this really dark place telling this story. So this is the type of film that I feel like only David Lynch could make. I cannot see anyone else making this type of movie, and that just goes to show how creative of a director and how good of an artist Lynch is when you watch something that you feel like only one person could have told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then just kind of wrapping up a little bit more of story wise, and then we'll get into some more of our just personal thoughts. But this film kind of concludes with Pete and Alice wanting to just run away, get away from Mr. Eddie and all that. But the ending, I think, is really effective because it shows like the interjection of Fred and Pete when they get to that like shack off the side of the road. That's where like Pete and Alice get out, and they kind of, they think they're gonna get away, but then as I think Alice goes into the shack and Pete's behind her, but then it turns to Fred, and the mystery man pops up, which
he doesn't turn into Fred just yet, but
okay, yeah. But when the mystery man shows up, it kind of just reinvigorates that, this was a fantasy. And the mystery man, when he's on screen, that just shows, like, the truth, kind of. That's how I take it. But I actually skipped a part that I wanted to mention. When Pete and Alice go to, whose house did they go to? Andy's house, the adult film star producer. I take this as well because in this moment they obviously are trying to rob him and get his money and run away, but accidentally Pete ends up killing Andy. But I think obviously in this world it's an accident, but I think in real life Fred version he actually went to Fred's house. He actually went to Andy's house and killed him because Fred was not a fan of Andy because he thinks that him and Renee had a relationship, which in real time with Fred when he's married to Renee, I don't think they did, but I think that picture that they had where it's Mr. Eddie, Renee, Alice, and Andy.
Yeah, vaguely, but yeah.
And then at the very end of the movie, when the cops come to Andy's house and they're like, "Oh, isn't that Renee, Fred Madsen's wife?" The actual photo is Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent, Renee, and then Andy. So the true picture is just 3 of them. So I think at some point, before Renee met Fred and all that, I think she was probably a adult film actress or something like that. And I think once Fred finds that out and all that, that's where his mind really goes crazy. That's obviously where he kills Andy which you don't see Fred killing Andy, but I think that's actually what happened. He kills Mr. Eddie slash Dick Laurent, and obviously he kills his wife, Renee. If there's any more plot points you want to get into, go for it. But after that,
I did have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
And I'm glad you didn't ask me this, because I wouldn't have been able to give you a straight answer. And you've seen the film 4 times, so I was just wondering what your interpretation was of the scene with Pete and Alice having sex on the beach, and then Alice says to Pete,
that was
"You'll
like
never
off the
have
side
me."
of the road. That was like off the side of the road.
Okay.
But I know what you mean. Yeah. So I took that as like, obviously Pete is the figment of Fred's imaginations, and when she's like, "You'll never have me," I think I interpret that as a way. Fred, like I said at the beginning of this video, Fred, it seems like a very jealous man. He thinks his wife Renee is cheating on him and all that, and I feel like in a lot of ways he wanted to control her. And like I said, Renee and Alice are the same person. They just look different, but they're the same person. But when Alice says to Pete, "You'll never have me," I just take that as she's saying, "You'll never control me. Like, I'm my own person. No matter how much you're kind of jealous or you think you want to control my life, you'll never have that." And at that moment, after she says that, that's where you get, I think she kind of disappears into the shack, and then that's when you get the mystery man popping up, which I think is just like kind of showing the wake up call of being like, when Fred really realizes, oh, I screwed up bad. I killed my wife, I killed Mr. Eddie, I killed Andy, and now my life is ruined. Because this portion of the movie is kind of at the end, and then that's where you said, Jathan, obviously you get him driving very manically on the highway again. So I just took that moment as, Fred realizes that his jealousy, his kind of deranged mind really just ruined his relationship and his life, because Renee, his wife, did really love him. She did really want to have a good life with him, but his jealousy, all his stupid thoughts, completely ruined that. And no matter what he did, he'll never have control over her, and he never did. So that part was really, really effective to me.
It's built up so well, like through the music, and I guess we'll just talk about that briefly.
I'm gonna just take a piss real quick, but if you want to get into it, I'll come right back.
Yeah. Yeah, Lynch just like, he uses these like really metallic, like droning sounds to like really unsettle you in a way that, like, I don't know, there's just an air about it that really makes you feel uncomfortable and feel that you're not safe, and it puts you in a dark place. Again, this is not a film for everyone. This is a film that deals with heavy subject matter, and Lynch does a great job of conveying that through the music. Again, there's some great pieces here. Nick touched on this, the David Bowie track. My mind's kind of blanking a little bit, but there's a ton of great stuff here. It gives you a bigger picture of the plot, and what he does with sound here is just really cool, because it plays on the derangedness of the film, and Lynch is just great at creating these unsettling moods, and the sound really amplifies the movie to 11. And I think when you watch this film, you should have a TV to watch this on that looks good, and two, you need to not have anything going on in the background, because again, the more you're invested in this film with its like elements, because Lynch cares about this a lot, the more you are able to listen to the sound, watch the pictures move on your screen, it's gonna amplify your experience.
I know you're just talking about music and sound. Did you mention the song to the siren song or no?
No, and my mind was blanking a little bit. So, could you
Okay.
like dive
Yeah,
more
I
into
wanted to
that?
mention that. So that song comes up at least two times, maybe more. It comes up first when at the beginning of the movie Fred is having his nightmare, and when he rolls over and sees Renee, but the mystery man's on his face. The song comes up then, and then it also comes up when Pete and Alice pull over on the side of the road and like have sex in front of the car. The song is playing through that scene, and I think this song is just as effective as David Bowie's song at the beginning of the movie because I'm just gonna read some of the lyrics here. I have it pulled up. It says, "On the floating shipless oceans, I did my best to smile to your singing eyes and fingers," which I just kind of take that as like, you know, Renee at the beginning of the movie. She's very. They don't ever say it, but you can tell that they're not in a good marriage and they're probably on the brink of divorce. But she seems like she's just sticking it out and trying to be a good wife to Fred. But obviously, he is very. He's gone psychologically. He's completely gone. And I think the song just it goes on to say like sail to me, let me unfold you, like here I am, and Fred all has all these positive things in his life. He has a nice house, obviously he has a job, he's a musician, his wife loves him, his wife is beautiful, but he can't help himself and just thinking of jealousy and all that type of stuff. So I think in that moment, um, when the song is playing with Pete and Alice towards the end of the movie, I think it just reinvigorates, how much of a mistake he made. And obviously, like you said, Jathan, when she says, "You'll never have me," that just kind of puts the cap on it. And it's just like, I think in that moment, Fred really realizes that, oh, okay, I really, really messed up.
Yeah, I think that was a good analysis. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we kind of get into the end of the movie here?
Um, Not really. I mean, if there's something specific on the end you want to talk about, go into it. I just have a few things on like performances wise, but we can save that till after. We can just finish up talking about the actual subject of the movie.
I don't have too much to add on here. I mean, this is a movie that only gets deeper the more you watch it, and I've only seen it once. Um, you could certainly talk about this movie for like 24 hours, literally. Like,
Yeah, it's
there's
just
so much to pull from here, and I've covered everything about the first two acts that comes to mind.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, the ending I love. I think it's just the personification. I think it kind of, in a way, it's like OJ when he was running away in his Bronco. Fred Madsen is obviously in a car chase with the cops, so that's a parallel. But also, I think when he, if you've,
OJ was
if
driving the
anybody,
Bronco, or Fred Madison was driving the
no,
Bronco?
no, OJ was, but I'm saying Fred was chasing. He was driving away from the cops. He wasn't in a Bronco, but I'm saying that's the same kind of. It's the same thing. They're both running from the cops.
Okay.
Um, but when they do a close up of Fred in the car, he is like two hands on the steering wheel, like gripping them, but his head is shaking like really, really fast, and it's like lights are flashing. Which, if you ever seen any movies that involve people on what's it called,
The
um,
electric chair.
the electric chair, that's what happens. So I just take it as the movie ends showing us that Fred did get the death sentence and he dies, and that's kind of the end of it. And I think it's very effective how David Lynch did that, especially because the movie opens um, with that scene as well.
Again, David Lynch would probably kill you before he tells you the meaning of his movies, but that's a very popular interpretation. Um, Again, his mind is just spiraling here in this scene where he's on the run, but again, it's like a descent into madness in the sense that he's on the same path that he was at the beginning of the film, so it does tie back into that. And he's on the highway again. Lynch kind of goes into this more into detail, I have notes here that like
Mm-hmm.
kind of takes from the interview from the Criterion, which is what I love about these Criterion collections. And you should watch it on Criterion if you can. If not, it's fine. But what I love about Criterion is they provide these like samplets and like supplemental material that just makes me like, especially as a film student, it's really helpful. But I'm just gonna read off this quote I wrote, and he's like, "That's the way it is in relationships. Sometimes you don't know where they're going to go. If there's an end to them, if there's more trouble, it's just something you have to ride on. And all those things are not intellectualized. You have so many choices. So when you're setting up something, you have to keep working on it till it feels right. As soon as it matches up in feeling and all the moves and the look and the sound reinforce that, you're on the right track." And it kind of just reinforces Lynch's belief in filmmaking, in kind of his perspective on what a film should do. And I think it's a masterpiece. Obviously, I said this earlier, it's not for everyone. I can't
Mm-hmm.
state that enough, that it's not for everyone. But if you love horror, if I think this is for you, because there are elements in this that are going to spook you for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the jump scare type of movie, but it's the type of movie that gives you a bone to chew on that you probably won't stop thinking about until you have a dream, and you might even have a nightmare about this film. So that's what I thought. I think it's a 5 out of 5. Um,
Mm-hmm. For me as well, yeah.
I don't know how much more you want to add on to this, but it kind of segues into our next segment.
The last two things I want to touch on, not just performance wise, because you know I'm a big fan of actors
Yeah.
and performances. Two people I want to touch on. I'll quickly do this person first because the other person I want to talk about a little bit more. Robert Blake, who plays the Mystery Man. I don't know much about him. I just have only really seen him in this. But I think he is the element of this movie that really leaves you unsettling. Because for two reasons. One, his character is very kind of scary to look at just in his design. But two, to me he represents guilt, and I think a lot of us are afraid of guilt sometimes when we know we did something bad or something wrong and we don't want to face the truth. His character is that. It's just a personification of that. So I think that's why he's so effective. But I really want to touch on Patricia Arquette, which I have her filmography pulled up right now on the stream. She has done a lot of great movies and a lot of great roles. She won her Oscar for Boyhood, which she's fantastic in that. True Romance, she's really good. You've seen Holes before, right? She's kissing Kate Barlow in that, if you remember that movie.
I see Toy
So
Story 4 on here.
yeah, who does she voice? Somebody's mom, I don't know. But she's a good actress. Bringing Out the Dead, she's really good in. But I think Lost Highway is by far her best performance. I think she should have been nominated for the award. I don't know who won in 1998, which would have been the award season, but I think she should have won. I think this performance is kind of one of the most brave and unforgiving performances. Obviously, she's playing two characters, but yes, they are the same woman. They're one and the same, but there's a lot of nudity in this for her, which is not very tough to do. And back then, to my knowledge, it's not really how films were made today. There wasn't like intimacy coordinators that much. There wasn't really a great emphasis on that. So I think that's very brave. And I don't know if you saw the interview I sent to you of her, but she said like she planned on requesting from the studio to get like a trainer to be like in great shape and all that, but she said she wanted to just look like a everyday woman. Like she didn't want to be like in crazy shape, super toned up. So I think that's very admirable of her. But obviously Patricia Arquette's a very beautiful woman, so I don't think a lot of people think anything negative of her in that light. But I think her performance is so good. It's so effective. She really is. I think the humanity element in this film, because obviously Fred Madsen is a uh, very despicable character. You said you think he's even worse than Patrick Bateman, which Patrick Bateman is one of the worst fictional movie characters out there. But it's a book too as well. But yeah, I just like as a whole, I love this movie, but I really come back to this movie for her because, like I said, I'm a big actor first guy. I love performances, and Patricia Arquette in this as Renee and Alice, I think, is one of the best performances I have ever seen. So I just wanted to shed some light on that and shout out that.
I think that this movie kind of sets itself apart because I think what Fred goes through is like a very primal fear. I think it's something that obviously not to this extent, but when you make like a mistake as a kid and you're not able to like forgive yourself, I guess, or like it kind of haunts you. I feel like that's something everyone can kind of relate to. And
Yeah.
obviously it's not to that extent, but he made a huge mistake here. And again, just regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was
so
another point I wanted to touch on.
I'll go for it.
But I'm like losing my train of thought here.
If you think about it, as we go into the next segment, just interject and stop it.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to introduce next. So, like I said, this is not a big segment. We just kind of want to touch on some other David Lynch films. I'm going to go through my ranking at the end, but Jathan's only seen a few more of his films. Mulholland Drive being the one that you saw in full, which I've seen. If you want to just quickly touch on that, what you thought about it when you watched it. We won't spend too much time on it, but just kind of what you think about Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, Mulholland Drive is like... Okay, and I just remembered my thought.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
So I'll just touch on that. The way that the dialogue is used is like... It's just very weird. It's not how people will usually talk. And like, people will go like a minute or like 30 seconds without saying anything, and it feels so awkward, but it works so well because you're really like on the edge of your seat. And I feel like people have been in similar situations, whether that be at a house party, and I'm kind of thinking of the scene with the mystery man here, where he'll just kind of say something and just like...
Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, he's just waiting for your response. Yeah.
He has this like really weird facial expression after he tells him something. It might have been when he's like, I'm in your house right now, but he's like...
Mm-hmm.
And it's really unsettling. If you can't tell, we love this movie.
Yeah.
But to go on to Mulholland Drive, I really don't like, and this kind of segues into the next segment a little bit, so I don't really care for like ranking Lynch's movies because they're all so different, but it's a much different film than Lost Highway in the sense that it feels like a normal movie at first. Like, it feels like I'm being served this dish that looks pretty good, but I don't really know, like, if you've ever seen like a cross section on like a burger or like a steak, you don't know like how tenderized the meat is until you eat it. So it's like I don't know what to expect. It looks good, but then once I start eating the dish, it's like, what is this? Like, it's really freaky in the sense that, I'll just spoil it. There's multiple personalities at play here. It's a movie about jealousy, and I need to rewatch this movie, but
it's a lot on first watch. My second watch, I definitely absorbed a lot more.
There's just a lot at play here. You see people deal with what's the term? Amnesia and a loss of identity, and I like that it plays on Hollywood and how replaceable you are, and how much jealousy there is, how much people wish they were in other people's shoes. I think that it's just a really interesting concept. I'm not going to ramble on too much longer because I feel like Nick is more better equipped to explain stuff here, but it's a great watch. I gave it a 4.5. It's not a detriment to its quality at all, but again, I don't really care for ranking Lynch's films because they're all so different, and he's a special filmmaker in that he tells these stories that are so vague, but they deeply connect to you because I feel like they focus on very primal fears, and it's just it makes your flight or flight kick in.
Yeah. I will say though, I do think Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway are very similar. A lot of Lynch films are very different and unique, but I think these films have similar themes in the sense of jealousy. Naomi Watts' character is very jealous, it kind of gets very revealed at the end. Because most of this movie, unlike Lost Highway, it's very first half, second half, and it's kind of both equal. This movie, most of it is kind of what you think is the real world for most of it, and I would say the last like 15ish minutes, it reveals that like, oh, Naomi Watts is really just this washed up wannabe actress that is jealous of what's her name, of Camilla's fame and fortune, and it kind of just unravels that. It has very scary elements like Lost Highway. I don't think we talked about this, but you know the scene where the bum jumps out of the alleyway.
Honestly, I'm not familiar.
I'll pull it up on my screen.
Again, I've only seen this movie once, and if you couldn't tell already, these movies are very deep. So there's a lot of moving gears here.
Once I show you the picture, you'll definitely remember. You see my stream?
Oh yeah. Okay.
That part of the movie is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
She like has a panic attack too, right?
No, it's the guy. It's
yeah.
Not. Yeah, but yeah, it's. This movie is like a more, just what I say, like dreams and false realities. What people envision in their mind is not really the truth. I give it a 4 out of 5. I think upon rewatch, it could go up to a 5. I really love it. Maybe down the line we'll do a deep dive into this episode, into this movie like we did Lost Highway. But yeah, I don't want to harp on it too much. And I don't want to push us along too much. Just I'm on a little bit of a time crunch, but I love Mulholland Drive. There's been lists that come out, the best movies of the 21st century and the best actors of the 21st century or best performances. And funny enough, Mulholland Drive got, I think, the first or second or best movie, and Naomi Watts got best performance of the 21st century. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like, as much as I love David Lynch, I feel like they're kind of playing into his death, which happened fairly recently, so I feel like they're giving him a lot of light and shine. I do think Naomi Watts is fantastic in this, though. I don't think it's the best performance of the 21st century, but I think she does a great job. Mulholland Drive, I don't think it's the best movie of the 21st century, but I think it's for sure up there. If there's anything you want to more touch on, please go for it. But if not, I'm going to pull up my ranking of David Lynch.
I just want to touch on the fact that I think David Lynch is a very special director and that he is very committed to his vision. And you can see it in any of his work. You can see it in any of his interviews. He very much understands the position of an artist, and he also very much understands what it takes to protect that vision. And I think he realized this with Dune. I haven't seen Dune, but he did not have final cut of that film. And I think that became a deal breaker for him later on in his career because it's something you have to protect. I mean, a studio can have a very different outlook on your vision, and once that gets muddled with their vision, it just doesn't become a cohesive piece anymore. And so Lynch
Yeah.
at first was an art student, and you can see that because Lynch is a painter first, and he is going to illustrate these emotions and feelings to carry you along with his vision and his direction with these films.
Yeah. So yeah, this is just kind of the last thing of the episode. This year I've made it a mission to watch a lot of David Lynch movies and also rewatch a bunch. So I have my ranking pulled up. I've seen 9 of his films so far, and I'll just kind of quickly go through them. Dune, I have number 9. Like Jathan just said, he didn't have final cut on this. The Dune book is massive. I'm actually currently reading it right now. Obviously, what Denis has done with Dune is fantastic, and I think Denis was very smart in making sure that the movie got split up, that the book got split up into 2 movies because it's so dense and so much. David Lynch pretty much turned a 700-800 page book into a 2 hour and 15 minute movie, which I don't care how good of a director you are, that's just never gonna work out, and I feel like that's the reason why. But I am gonna rewatch that one day because I think as much as it is very rushed and nothing really gets to breathe, I think David Lynch's creative mind is really cool in here. Um, Number 8, I have Inland Empire. This film is just a behemoth of a film. It's about 3 hours long, and it's pretty much taking Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive and injecting it with steroids. The thing is crazy. I think Laura Dern is great. Will I rewatch it one day? Maybe. Is it going to be anytime soon? Probably not. I didn't hate it, but definitely, I think it was a little, David Lynch was a little too unleashed in this, if that makes any sense. I think he could have reeled himself back in a little bit. I give that one a 3 out of 5, though. Number 7, Eraserhead. One of his early films. It's really short. It's only about 80 minutes. I think I give it a 3.5 out of 5. You know, I liked it. I think it's kind of a lot of directors. They have early films that are kind of a little more independent, student made, and I feel like that is the reason here. Like it's not bad. It's just I think he has a lot much better work once he's kind of has his ideas and directing style kind of polished. Number 6, I have Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. I think upon rewatch, this film could go up. This film, I was sick to my stomach watching it. I don't know. I don't know if you tapped into Twin Peaks yet, Jathan, but obviously this film spoils season 1 and 2, and I'm not gonna obviously spoil it for people watching or for you, but it is the real conflict of this movie is gross. It's terrible. It's I've really never seen anything like it before. Number 5, I have Blue Velvet. I have this on Criterion and Blu-ray. I've seen it twice. This is low key kind of a fan favorite of a lot of David Lynch fans, and a lot of actors say that this is their favorite movie from him. I like it. The theme of it is, on the surface, a lot of times we think everybody's life is like picture perfect and so clean, but once you actually step into somebody's life and see like the underworld of it and what is truly going on, it's horrible, and that's what this film showcases. Seen it twice. I think the performances are good. It's really unsettling, but it's not one of my favorites if I'm being honest. I do like it, but there's a few more I like before. Wild at Heart, Laura Dern, and Nicolas Cage. I feel like out of all his films on this list, I feel like this might be a good one to start with because it has a lot of Lynch's very unique style and unique storytelling, but I feel like it's more comprehensible on first watch. I feel like there's, for an average moviegoer, I feel like this one is a good one to do. And Laura Dern is very good in this. She's like kind of a David Lynch staple. She's very good in his films. Nicolas Cage is very unhinged here, which is very typical for him. 3, Mulholland Drive. I'm not going to touch on it. We just talked about it. It's very good. I think upon rewatch, this could maybe jump the Elephant Man, but at 2, I do have the Elephant Man. Early film from David Lynch. I'm pretty sure this might be a book or a short story or something. I don't know if he came up with the idea. I could be wrong, but it's very good. Has Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt. This movie is a very digestible movie too. If you're like not a super crazy movie fan, I feel like anybody can watch this. It's just a very human movie about just a man with a disabilities, and he just gets treated like crap just because of the disabilities. But underneath all that, he's just a normal human being, a regular guy. And Anthony Hopkins is kind of the first person in his life that kind of, treats him normal and cares for him. And it's just a very heartfelt movie. And every time I've seen it twice, I cry every time I watch it. And number one, as we just discussed for the past like hour and a half, Lost Highway. It's perfect in every sense of the world. I think it's David Lynch at his best. I think he was just absolutely, as the kids say, in his bag with this one. So, yeah, that's my ranking of all his films that I've seen so far. I think the only other feature film from him that I think I have to watch is The Straight Story. But besides that, it's just the Twin Peaks shows, and it's Rabbits, which is just a short film that goes together with Inland Empire. But yeah, I pretty much went through his whole filmography this year, and it was a lot of fun doing that. It's he's a director that I've known his name for a very long time, but I felt like it was good that I waited to get into his films, being a more kind of this sounds arrogant, but a polished film watcher. Like I've seen a lot now. I've seen a lot of different styles, and I feel like if I watched these movies in high school, I probably would have hated them. But I think, like I said, understanding film a lot more and caring about film more, I have a better appreciation for them as I got a little bit older.
Yeah, again, Lynch isn't someone who makes movies for everyone. So yeah, like Nick said, you definitely need an understanding of cinema and just a different appreciation than the mainstream view to get the full experience out of this.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this episode. It's pretty much just Lost Highway and a little kind of appreciation for David Lynch. Obviously, it was this year he passed away. I thought it was late last year, but he passed away January of this year, which to my knowledge, I think he was actually trying to work on something new. I don't know if it was going to be a movie or a short film or a TV show, but I'm pretty sure he was trying to work on something.
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's very sad. Obviously, I've made a couple videos about his movies on my TikTok page, and funny enough, my Lost Highway video I made did really good for my TikTok page. I don't have a lot of followers, but it did really well, and his daughter actually commented on that video, which I thought was really, really cool. But yeah, like I said, I haven't been his movies haven't been a part of my life for a very long time, but they definitely have changed my outlook on movies in a very positive way in this last year that I've been watching him. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan of him. I think Jathan has said it a bunch of times. He doesn't make movies for everybody, but I think if you are someone watching this video and you haven't seen any of his films, I think two of them to start with that are very, easy to watch, and I think anybody can kind of follow along with them, is The Elephant Man or Wild at Heart. I think if you watch those and you like those, then I think you can kind of expand more into his Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway. Then I think you can start getting into the very more psychological stuff. But yeah, just as Jathan said, just be aware what you're getting into. It's very dark, heavy topics. It can be scary at times, very unsettling, very complex. But he is somebody that has a very particular palette in what he likes to portray. But it's some of the best work I've seen from any director. He isn't in my personal top 3 or top 5, but that's not to diminish his talents. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I've been reading his book called Catching the Big Fish, and it kind of dives into his process in grabbing ideas, because I think as a aspiring director writer, it's like a very hard place to put yourself in. It's definitely possible, but it requires a lot of time, energy, and focus to get to that point. And I find myself sometimes writing stuff that I'm not in particularly proud of, and so his book has just been tremendous in helping me not find my voice, but get into that energy space where I'm able to think about these ideas that have been bouncing around in my brain for a while that I just haven't really been able to put pen to paper to. So I definitely recommend that book if you're a student like me who just wants to get into that realm more, and definitely watch some of these movies. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to change how you look at movies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it for episode 5. Like I said, I can't believe we're already on episode 5. We're cooking away. Obviously, our schedules are crazy. We're in 2 different time zones. As we're recording this now, it's pretty early in the morning for Jathan, so I appreciate him waking up early and getting to fit this in. But yeah, that's our 5th episode. We're gonna have a little gap in between of recording, I assume, again. So hopefully we'll get some good ideas and some good movies picked out for episode 6. But yeah, that was it for today. Jathan, if you want to add anything else.
If you guys have any recommendations at all, or like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be a particular movie, it can be just something you want us to cover, leave a comment, drop an email. You know where to find us.
Yeah. We don't have a big following, but on our TikTok, if you want to leave a comment about a movie, if you're watching this video, please feel free to share any thoughts about anything. We'll really appreciate it. So.
Again, at the end of the day, we just want to have fun with this and just have a
Mm-hmm.
place where people can discover movies, and hopefully for us to like find stuff that we haven't watched. Again,
Yeah.
we want to do this for fun. Just have a space where we can be ourselves and just talk about what we love, which is movies. I'm not sure when this episode is coming out. It's going to come out sometime in September. So I might be a little late to the bus on this, but you should check out Regal Cinemas. They're doing 30 days of classic films, some that don't get released often. I know I saw The Godfather. I don't know if you want to pull this up, Nick, of the schedule, but there's some great stuff for you to watch, especially if it's your first time watching some of these films. There's no better place to do it in a movie theater, in my opinion. So don't miss the ship on this.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find a picture that shows all of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here we go. This is the one that I wanted.
How many of these have you checked out so far? It's September 4th when we're recording this, but
Yeah. So I actually had tickets to The Dark Knight the other day, but I was really tired. And the Regal that's near me is minimum an hour away. With traffic, it can turn into an hour and a half. So I ended up just refunding my ticket and skipping it. But I for sure, and funny enough, I've actually seen a lot of these movies in theaters already, and a lot of them are my favorites. But I have There Will Be Blood for September 30th. I'm definitely seeing that. I'm not missing that because that movie's gonna look gorgeous on the big screen. I think I am going to see Lawrence of Arabia again. I actually saw it at Regal, I think almost 2 years ago, and that movie's just, I'm sure it's great watching it at home, but in a theater it's next level. But a lot of these I have seen in theaters already, like 2001, Vertigo, I've seen Inception, The Thing, Interstellar I've seen in theaters, Seven I've already seen 3 times in theaters this year, on top of
this
watching
year.
it at home. Yeah, because we went to Cinemark to see it once. I went to AMC to see it again, and I went to Alamo to see it again. Um, tw- uh, two, A Clockwork Orange on September 21st is really the only one on here that I'm gonna make it a mission. If this Regal was closest to me, I would probably try to check them all out. But Clockwork Orange, I've seen it before. I love the movie, but I have to see that on the big screen.
Hey, look, Cinema Paradiso.
hmm Yeah, there's a lot of great ones on here, but like I said, I have seen a lot of these in theaters already, which is I'm very lucky. And most of these movies on this list I've seen. The only ones I think I haven't seen is Breakfast Club, Citizen Kane, Paper Moon I haven't seen, and that is about it. Oh, Close Encounters I haven't seen, but I would say probably 26 out of 30 of these I've seen. So I'm familiar with all these. and I love them all. So
Yeah, Nick will be covering that on his TikTok. He's very
yeah,
active on there. He's always watching stuff, so go check his
I hope
page
I
out.
yeah I hope I get to see at least more than one for sure. There will be blood I'm watching, and I'm gonna make it a mission to try to see a Clockwork Orange. But yeah, if there's a Regal near you, this is perfect opportunity because these movies don't come around on re-releases very often. So go take advantage of it.
Bring some friends too. Like a lot of these are stuff that I think will change people's minds about film. Um, 2001 is just a crazy film. I'm not gonna dive too much into it, but to see that in theaters would be like such a trip.
When I
It,
saw that at the Somerville Theater, I can't even lie to you. I think it is my favorite theater experience of all time because the
wow.
you obviously know the Somerville Theater. When I went to that one, every seat was taken up, completely packed, sold out. But there's a particular scene in it. I don't want to go into details, but it's really loud. And even when you watch it at home, it's loud. But in that Somerville Theater, um, they introduced movies a lot there. So at the beginning of the introduction, the guy was like, if you've seen this movie, everybody knows the scene, but I don't want to spoil. But there's a certain scene where it's gonna get very loud in this theater, and it's probably gonna like pop your ears like how Airplane does, and that's what happened. And a few people walked out of the theater during that scene because it was that damn loud. Um, I will never forget that. When I did see it in theaters, it was my second watch, so I had already seen it, and I knew what the story was. But that movie, I still can't really wrap my head around how that movie was made in the '60s because it looks better than anything that has come out this year. And there's been beautiful movies this year. Sinners was beautiful. There's been Mickey 17 is great. There's a lot of great movies that came out this year, but I don't think there's, from a practicality standpoint, I don't think there's a better movie made ever than 2001.
But yeah, that's gonna about do it. Um, Watch some movies. There's some great stuff out there. I know a lot of people kind of wait for a certain period of the year, like winter or summer, to get their movie watches in, but for people like us who will watch year round, there's definitely treats that these theaters want you to get in their seats, you know. As much as I love movie theaters, it's they're on thin ice, and you need to take advantage of these opportunities while you can, because you might not ever see movies like 2001, movies like The Thing, movies like
Mm-hmm.
Shawshank Redemption in a theater in this big, massive space ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
not to get too
that's it.
dramatic, but
Yeah. No, it's somebody actually commented on my TikTok page yesterday. I know I'm rambling on. They were like, "Oh, I hope Tenet has a re-release in theaters soon," because I just made a bunch of videos about Tenet yesterday. Because obviously we're recording this on the 4th, but it's gonna come out later. But September 3rd was the anniversary of Tenet, and I commented them. I was like, it might come out on a re-release because Nolan has a movie coming out next summer. Which typically when big directors have movies coming out, some theaters will showcase like their older films, but Tenet had its big rerun last year in 2024. So, when you see these movies, take advantage of it because they might not come back in theaters like this again. So, I definitely try to take advantage as much as I can. That's why this year I saw Seven 3 times in theaters because it is a top 4 film of all time for me, and who knows when I'll get to see it in theaters ever again. So that's why I try to always take advantage when I see these things pop up.
yeah, that's gonna do it for episode 5. We don't have a plan for 6, right? Not
No,
the
not right
second.
now, but we luckily bulk recorded some episodes, so we got some time. And I know when October comes around, I definitely want to tap into at least do 1 or 2 episodes about a horror movie, and do some horror ranking lists and like stuff like that. So
For
we'll
sure.
obviously we'll try to get some themes going to the time of the year. But yeah, that's all I got for today's episode.
Sounds good, and I think we'll be signing off.
All right,
So
peace.
stay tuned.